Okay, in this video I'm going to be discussing a debate I've just seen on CNN regarding the M word. I don't think I need to say the word because I think anyone watching this will know what I'm talking about. And personally I don't use it, and I'll explain that in a minute. But anyway, the debate involved Don Lemon, who of course is a black newsreader, Ben Ferguson, who's a presenter, but I haven't heard of the guy before, he's a white guy. I'm saying that simply because it is relevant to this discussion. A rapper from Trinidad called Trinidad James, and a fourth guy, another black guy. Unfortunately, his name I forgot. This was the tail end of the debate. At the beginning of the debate, which I also saw, it was an introduction to this guy Trinidad James, and Don Lemon was sort of debating with him about his usage of the N-word in his songs, and he was saying that it was harmless. He's not got a prejudice bone in his body. He gets on well with anyone, and there's no hostile intent with the lyrics being used in his song. And Don Lemon was sort of like, well, it's an image, isn't it, that you're an eccentric guy, this is the way you dress and so on. But anyway, I hope some of the people watching this will have seen that debate, because then you'll know some of the things that were said in it. I'm afraid I don't have a link to it because I've literally just watched it. Maybe if the debate's recorded later on their Facebook page, I'll put a link. But anyway, it was somewhat heated debate. There was different positions being taken. The fourth black guy, the guy whose name I don't know, was taking quite a strong position that within the black community there's no problem with it, but white people have no right to, in his view, be telling black people what to say. The white guy was saying it should just be banned outright. He believes it's an ugly word, it has no place in American society, and it should be banned outright. Don Lemon, from what I could gather, was taking a somewhat neutral position. I guess he has to because he's the newsman. And the rapper, of course, was taking the position that within the black community it's harmless. I have to say, I personally don't use the word simply because I've got no reason to. And I'm not one of these people who say, oh well, it's politically correct, they can say it, but so why can't we? I actually do understand the historical context, and I do understand why it is such a controversial and contentious word for, especially if white people were saying it. This isn't a case of saying something that someone might be too sensitive about. You need to understand the historical context to understand just how deeply ingrained the significance of this word is. Especially when you consider that as late as the 1940s, black men in the South were being lynched whilst rabid, racist white crowds were yelling, "Hang the N-word." And so I fully understand why that word is such a contentious word. And generally speaking, it's most words, mostly I'm completely for freedom of expression. I wouldn't support prosecuting a white person simply for saying it unless it was an explicitly racist incident. So for example, if a white person said it because they were singing the lyrics to a song by someone like Trinidad James, or even if they said it, I don't support prosecuting them for it. I think that's too far. But I do think there should be a taboo around saying it. So the debate with this is, well, is it helpful or unhelpful that there are some people within the black community, notably rappers, who use the word? I understand there's an argument that there are people like that who use it as a form of empowering, in a similar way that some gay men use the word, and I'm going to say the word, faggot, or poof, as a way to empower them. But if a person who is blatantly homophobic said it, or even if a heterosexual person said it, even in a non-hateful context, it would be contentious. So there are certain words that seem to be okay within a certain community, but then contentious when someone from outside the community uses it. Although, I'll put on record, I don't think that any black person should be using the word cracker casually either. I appreciate that it's not as historically contentious as the N-word, but racism goes both ways, and if we're going to say that certain words don't particularly help society, the word cracker is never, ever, from what I gather, meant in a positive way. It's meant in a negative way. So there should also be taboo around that word. And if a public black figure were to use the word, he or she should be shunned for it and should face criticism for it, because public figures have responsibility. So I'm not saying that it's on level with the N-word, but I'm just saying that to me the word cracker is a pejorative. It's never used in a, like, I've never seen a black person say, "Oh, you're my cracker," in a friendly way. It's clearly used in a hostile way. But not to go off on a tangent on that. I'm not saying it's on level with the N-word, because it's not. It doesn't have the same historical context. But you know, anyone using a negative word intended as negative shouldn't do so. I do understand the argument that Ben Ferguson is making. He's saying that whilst it might be about empowerment, it's sending out the wrong message that the word can be trivialized. And I think it was Don Lemon, and don't quote me on this, but he was sort of agreeing in some sense with Ben Ferguson. He's saying, you think the word empowers you as a black performer, but actually isn't it just giving power to racists? Because they will turn around and say, oh well, black guys use it, therefore we can use it. And I guess what Don Lemon was saying was, well, by using the word, they're empowering the usage of the word for everyone. It should be said, though, there's a slightly different word. When rappers say it, it's, from my understanding, nigga, with N-I-G-G-A. In the racist sense, it's with an ER at the end. And that might be the difference. Anyway, I'm not going to say much more about this. Personally, I don't use the word because I don't need to. Although I do see scenarios where it's not that straightforward. For example, if you have a white film director, let's say for the sake of argument Steven Spielberg or James Cameron, let's say they were to make a film about civil rights, and they want to make their film authentic, they want to show the sort of racism that existed. It would be a bit difficult to make a film about civil rights, the civil rights era, if you want to be, like, take a film like Selma for example. How could you make a film like that without using certain words that were used in a historical context? For example, you couldn't display a racist incident in a film like that and then have the white racist say something like, oh, you horrible black guy. No, they didn't say that, they said the N-word. And the director would need to use that to show just how ugly it was. So there's certain situations, I think, that white people would use it, and I don't agree that there's never a circumstance where a white person should use it, because there are certain circumstances like that. Then there's another question, well, what if there's white kids who like a certain black rapper and they want to sing his song? Should they then sing it without using the N-word, but the black kids are allowed to sing it? I mean, that's clearly problematic. And I think that that's something that needs to be addressed. So my own position is I don't use it personally. By the way, I think quotations are different. Say for example you have in a court of law, for example, there's been a hate crime, and a prosecutor has to use the word, then he or she is going to have to use a word to show the jury what was said. And there's numerous other examples, like I said, in media. If a director wants to portray racist history, he or she is going to have to show that. And I think there have actually been a few examples of white film directors using the N-word in their films. Anyway, let me know your thoughts. I'd particularly like to hear American responses, particularly African American responses. Do you think there's certain circumstances where the word's justified? Do you think it should be outright banned? If you think it should be banned, how can that be enforced? Because you can't obviously have police going into people's homes and that sort of thing. How then do you address the situation where there's a popular rapper? Should white fans of the rapper not sing his songs? And this is not me as a white guy arguing for the word. I personally don't like the word and I don't think it should be used. All I'm saying is it is not that straightforward. So let me know your thoughts. The reason I'm saying in an American context is the word is simply not that common here. I'm not saying it's never been used here. Actually, in the case of the UK, the racist word for black people, when we had a serious racism problem from, let's say, the 60s to the 80s, wasn't so much the N-word, there were other racist terms that were used, which I'm not going to say because it wouldn't really contribute to the video. But if you look at certain old British sitcoms, they're a lot more liberal with the usage than we are today. I will have one final thought though. I have a problem with legal action against people simply for using certain words. So I would stop short of legal action unless it's a clear-cut hate crime. If there is a word that's used, like, say for example, you have a white person and they're pissed off because they've had an altercation with a black person and they use a word, that's wrong. But I don't think they should be prosecuted for it. On the other hand, if you have a hate crime and the word is used in that context, then definitely it should be a factor. But basically, people should be responsible, and I do think rappers need to address this issue. They're saying it's an empowerment thing, but what do they then say to potentially their white fans? I'm sure Lil Wayne and this guy Trinidad James has plenty of white fans, so are those white fans supposed to not sing his songs if they wanted to? It's I think a fair question. Let me know your thoughts, and if you saw the debate, what did you make of the debate? Some people might argue this is complete double standards, because if black people can say it, so can they. But my question to other white people would be, unless you're quoting a rap song, then why would you want to say that word? It's an ugly word. Why would you, just like I wouldn't use, and I'll just say this, I wouldn't use the word chink, because it's a derogatory term for Chinese people. I don't use any derogatory racial terms because I don't think it's helpful. It's not because I'm being politically correct. I just think that intelligent people should be open-minded enough to use the proper terms. Here in Britain, I guess an equivalent word would be, and I'll just say it, Paki. That is seen as a derogatory term for Pakistani people, British Pakistani people. Although I'm sure there's plenty of derogatory terms that some of them would use for white Britons. There may be certain incidents. Actually, Eminem, from what I gather, it's been an issue sometimes with how he performs. I don't know if he's used the N-word in any of his songs or not. I'm not a fan of Eminem, but he's obviously an extremely successful rapper, and he's influenced a lot by black culture, so to speak. Let me know your thoughts. Here in the UK, there's contentious words like Paki. I don't use it. The people who do use it trivialise it and say, well, it's just an abbreviation. What is the difference between saying Paki and saying Brits? Sometimes the Americans call us Brits. Australians call us Limeys. Some people might find that offensive. I guess it depends all on historical context. And the N-word does have a much deeper historical context than, for example, Americans casually calling British people Brits. Personally, I'm not that offended by that, because there was never a history of American people keeping British people in slavery. So that is the difference. Also, when the word Paki is used by non-Pakistanis, it generally is derogatory. So this is not me as a white guy being all apologetic and politically correct. I'm just saying that people should be responsible, and those sort of terms shouldn't be casually thrown around. On the other hand, I don't support, for example, jailing someone just for saying something. I think that where there's any legal issue, it should be if there's a blatant hate crime taking place. If there hasn't been a hate crime but someone's offended, then okay, people shouldn't say that. But, people need to judge a situation from its context. Let me know your thoughts, otherwise I'm going to keep waffling on here. Do you think the word should be banned? If you don't, why not? If you do, why? Or do you think it's a word that should be taboo, but it shouldn't be legally banned, but simply talked about? I mean, I would say one thing, banning it would obviously cause problems with, I believe it's the First Amendment on freedom of expression. That would obviously cause some issues with that. And by the way, I don't think it's a human right to use a derogatory racial term, but I'm just saying it will plausibly cause some problems. So do let me know your thoughts. Cheers.